Hey everyone, so Christmas movies, right? We all like them. That's what I'm thinking about, because, I'm sorry, I need to take this stupid thing off. I'm the guy from Home Alone, you know, the Tic Tac Santa.
Here, pull out your little paw there. There you go.
So everyone has their favorite Christmas movies list, because if you guys didn't know this, like, Christmas is my favorite holiday. That's the holiday I always think about. It's the one I'm always most excited for because it's just awesome. It's so fun and it is exciting, and movies are the thing that really get me excited. The ones that really get me in the, Christmas spirit. It sounds cheesy, I know, but the ones that, are inviting, the ones that are cozy and homey, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I guess today I'm gonna be talking about my favorite Christmas movies of all time. So we're gonna start off with a couple of honorable mentions. These are movies that you may not consider them Christmas movies. These are just my personal picks, movies that kind of get me in the mood for it, I guess. We got A Muppet Christmas Carol. I love the Muppets. They're like my favorite thing ever. I love them. Them themselves are very inviting and loving, and this movie has kind of stuck with me over the years. I really like it. It's just a delightful little movie. We got Little Woman, the 1994 version with Winona Ryder, not the 2019 version, which I do like. I like the 2019 version. I think it's very good. It's a good movie, but I think I like the 94 one just a little more, and I think that's mostly because it has a very warm and inviting feeling to it from the very beginning, and yes, there are sad moments, but overall, it feels a lot more Christmassy, I guess, than the 2019 one, which I still really love. We got Frosty the Snowman. I grew up on this movie. I probably saw it a million times as a kid. It was awesome. I loved it. I love the animation for sure. That's one of the greatest things about that movie. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, it's a classic. I always loved that animation. It was creepy and off-putting. And especially looking back at it now, I'm surprised I wasn't freaked out as a kid. But I really like it. I think it's a really nice take on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I think, especially like for me, I never really knew who he was. And so whenever I think of Rudolph, I think of this movie. And then we got The Santa Claus, which, reflecting on it, is kind of weird. It's a weird movie. It's kind of creepy. The concept is kind of messed up. But if you kind of look at it overall, it's still a pretty good movie. So this is going to be a top 5 list. I don't know if I said that before, but it's going to be top 5. I don't love that many Christmas movies. So you're not going to see movies like A Christmas Story, Gremlins, The Holiday, the classics. These are my own personal picks. So let's go off with number 5. Elf is such a freaking great movie. It's not one of my top favorite films of all time or anything. I've heard people say that. It's not that close to my heart. It kind of helped me envision like what Santa and the North Pole and all that stuff was like. It was kind of that live action embodiment of that. As a kid, it kind of made me feel like this was what everything looked like, Will Ferrell especially, I still think this is his best performance. I've seen him in dramatic roles such as his role in Stranger Than Fiction, but I think to this day this is probably his best performance, but that's just because he's so charming and likable, and I'm not a huge Will Ferrell fan. I don't really like his movies all that much, and so that's saying a lot coming from me. I still really like him in this. James Caan is also very good, very underrated performance. He is pretty incredible, not gonna lie. I think this movie's pretty quotable. This is one of my friend's favorite movies of all time, and we would always talk about it and quote it together. It's such a freaking awesome movie. It's so inviting and loving, and it's still very hilarious for, being technically a family movie. And I don't find a lot of kids movies funny, and this is the one that really made me feel that way. I still really love going back to this. It's extremely rewatchable, very fun, and to this day it is definitely an all-time favorite Christmas classic. This is a thing Shane Black does. If you've seen Iron Man 3, that movie is set in Christmas for no reason at all. You got, I think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I believe, is set in Christmas. This is a thing Shane Black does. I don't know why, but he does. I mean, it is a pretty great holiday, but still, I don't really know why he does this. But for some reason with Lethal Weapon, it still feels like a Christmas movie, even though it doesn't need to be set on Christmas. And I think that's because of the idea of a buddy cop movie. You know, you got Mel Gibson and Danny Glover giving just two really excellent performances, doing a lot of banter. It's that predictable, formulaic movie that we kind of love to see. It kind of set the trend for a lot of buddy cop movies that were really awful later on, but this is the movie that established that genre, and I still think it's the best of the genre. I've seen the second one. I don't love it as much as this one, and I think the reason being is because this movie has kind of an arc for both of our characters. It's surprisingly emotional too. There is one scene that still really gets me. I mean, the movie's cheesy, 80s fun, but there is one scene in here that really got me with Mel Gibson in his trailer. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, but that scene really gets you. But it's such a fun movie. Overall, I really enjoy watching it every single time. It's very quotable, it's very memorable. The characters, Riggs and Murtaugh, are just some of the most endearing characters in any action movie ever. And like I said, it really inhabits that spirit, that really fun vibe that I just don't see with a lot of action movies, especially. You don't need to make an action movie set on Christmas, that's not necessary, but I just don't see that much anymore, which is not bad, but we do get. You know, I kind of miss the good old days when, you know, you would just see two cops banter with each other and it wouldn't be formulaic or predictable. It always felt, you know, nice and real. I have so many fond memories of watching it as a kid, but I think what I really, the scene that sticks in my head the most for some reason is the part where Kevin is running through the basement and he opens the door and he finds Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern standing there, and then they hang him up on the coat rack and threaten to bite his fingers off. For some reason that horrified me as a kid. It's not even scary at all, but for some reason it did. But there are a lot of things like that that are really iconic, especially Kevin, you know, eating ice cream. It was always just like, that was kind of, I wanted to be that kid. I mean, he was always just the ideal kid. To me, at least. It's just a movie I constantly go back to rewatch. It's also really sweet. It's very emotional. I mean, you got the whole thing about the parent being separated from the kid. And something I do really like that it doesn't get a lot of credit for is the ability to suspend your disbelief and stretching it and pushing it as close as it possibly can get. Because the idea of a parent leaving a kid at home by accident is kind of absurd if you really think about it. There are so many things that shouldn't work, but it does. It reminds me of movies like Back to the Future and School of Rock that have these concepts on paper that should be fine or kind of crazy or don't really work, and they somehow make it work really well. Home Alone is one of those prime examples of that. It just takes a weird concept that sounds kind of stupid, but it works. And the movie made a ton of money when it first came out. To this day, it's quoted, it's talked about all the time. It is one of the most iconic movies, children's movies I've ever seen. Also very funny. For being a family film, I always laugh at it, even with the slapstick humor at the end with the traps, which I always really liked as a kid. That was always the most exciting part. I still find it funny. Just the idea of these grown men being outrun by a kid doesn't feel cartoony or too over the top. Like I said, it suspends your disbelief as well as it can. Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern give excellent performance in here. One of my favorite scenes in the film is the part where Kevin talks to his neighbor and they just sit down and they just talk. It's a scene that in a normal kids movie today, they would completely cut out. They would think that's unnecessary, that's stupid. It's so sincere and so sweet and heartwarming that it completely works in the narrative. And the character of Kevin, like I said, is a character that at first he's kind of a jerk. He's kind of a brat. He's not a perfect kid, but you kind of see him overcome his fears. You see him go through a lot of different struggles, and you see him just kind of warm his heart a little bit, be a little more open to other people and just be a little nicer. There are just few Christmas movies that just get me in the spirit, you know, that get me excited, and this is one of those movies that just always gets me excited every single time I watch it. This movie is iconic from beginning to end, and I love literally everything about it. Yes, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I don't need to tell you guys this. I think it's one of the best Christmas movies ever made. This is also my favorite action movie of all time, and it's kind of a boring pick, I guess, because everyone says that, but it is very good. I feel that everything about the movie is on page with each other. Everyone is kind of, they know what's going on. You feel like there's a lot of good communication between all the different areas. The script, the acting, the cinematography, the direction, the action sequences, the way everything is just helmed and brought together, the editing, it all just flows very nicely, and you feel like everyone just kind of were communicating with everyone very well when they're on the set of this movie. This, in my opinion, I think is the best edited movie I've ever seen. And what I mean by that is they jump around to so many different places, to so many different storylines, to different characters and different locations, and they're talking on walkie-talkies sometimes, and it never feels like they're in a separate place because it all flows very well together. And when we finally have two characters meet in person, it feels weird because you're like, oh, I forgot. I thought they were in the same room the whole time, because it's just so seamless in the editing room. And everything just about this movie just feels like Christmassy. Because even though it takes place on Christmas, it doesn't feel unnecessary because it has a very fun vibe that I feel like an action movie, like if this movie came out today, it would take itself very seriously. And I haven't seen Die Hard 5, A Good Day to Die Hard or whatever it's called, but I hear that movie takes itself very seriously. This movie doesn't. And it still managed to be one of the best action movies ever made. It's because it's actually very funny. It has a lot of charm and charisma to it. And I think most of that is due to Bruce Willis's brilliant performance as John McClane, because John McClane is one of my favorite movie characters of all time. And what makes him work so well as a character is because he's relatable. He's someone with problems. He's somebody who, he's constantly struggling. And he's just a guy kind of caught in the crossfire, and he's just trying to find a way to save these people. He's just trying to talk to his wife. Honestly, this is a special movie because you can really, literally watch it anytime, and it's super rewatchable. And that's just because there's so much going on. But overall, the movie is just really, really incredible from beginning to end. It's not a perfect movie. It has flaws. Of course it does. But it's one of my favorites because, like I said, everything feels like it's on the same page. Everything flows very nicely to give you just a really entertaining, breezy, relaxing-ish experience that's, you know, both suspenseful and intense and has that stuff. It's comedic, it loosens the tension, and it has a lot of heart. And so it kind of mixes all those things together, and it works very well. I kind of knew what the third act was going to be, the guy reflecting on his life without him being born and seeing the difference he's made. I didn't realize that that's only the last third of the movie. The first 2/3 are actually kind of slow, and it never feels boring, and that's what kind of surprised me about it that first time I initially watched it, is the movie's just kind of celebrating life. It just shows life. You're like, this kind of feels unnecessary. Where is this going? And then at the end, everything is brought full circle. Everything that's introduced to you in those first 2 acts are all brought full circle in the third act, where this guy's reflecting on his life. It gives you a greater appreciation for life as a whole. And Jimmy Stewart does a really good job just kind of being really likable and charismatic, but also someone who's very damaged and is kind of sad. Because if you don't know what this movie's about, it's basically about George Bailey, a guy who, when he was a kid, always wanted to go on adventures. He wanted to go around the world. He had so many dreams and ideas of things he wanted to do with his life, and he had to put it on hold because so many things got in the way, and he feels like he's not doing anything. He doesn't feel like his worth is important. And then at the end, near the end of the film, where he decides, you know, to commit suicide, it's told at the beginning of the movie, so it's not technically a spoiler, is granted the opportunity to see what his life would be like without him in it. And it's him reflecting on all of this stuff. And it's just a really emotional film. And that's why the ending works so well for me. I'm not a huge fan of just feel-good movies for the sake of being feel-good. I feel like you need to have a reason to be happy. Same with have a reason to be sad. You can't just be happy for the sake of being happy. I feel like sometimes it can be very manipulative. But with this movie, it's one of my favorite endings of all time because everything just works, because everything's being brought full circle. It's so much more powerful when you see the lows That way the highs feel so much higher. And this film does that very well. It takes place on Christmas. Even if you take that away, it still feels like Christmas because it's happy, it makes you feel good about yourself, but it's never manipulative, it always works. It's a movie that's iconic in every way. It's one of my favorite movies of the 40s. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. That's something I like about Frank Capra. I just want to say this for a second. Frank Capra did a really good job with making films because his movies have always felt timeless. I watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington about a year ago, and something that really shocked me about that film was how well it aged. It doesn't really feel like a movie that came out in the 30s. It feels so relevant now. That's the same thing with It's a Wonderful Life. This is a movie that, yeah, it's black and white, but if you take that away, the film is really powerful. It's so relevant. Nothing about the movie feels dated. It all feels like it's up to date with everything else that's going on in the world, because the messages aren't really about surrounding technology or anything like that. This movie is about the human experience, and it never does anything else outside of that. It is just following a human being, follows through with it to the very end, and it is so incredibly engaging. It's satisfying. Yeah, this is definitely, most people will call this the best Christmas movie ever made, one of the best movies ever made. So if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend it. So yeah, those are my favorite Christmas movies of all time. Thanks for watching, I guess. I just want to say thanks for watching my videos. This is probably going to be my last video of the year. I'm gonna do my what I watched in December at the beginning of January, and then I have a big video I'm going to announce. So I guess I'm announcing an announcement to you guys. But in my December video, I'll talk about basically what I'm going to be doing. It's gonna be a big project. It's probably gonna be very long. Hopefully I get it out by the end of January. I don't want to put it out too late so if you like this video, check out more, I guess. You don't have to subscribe. I'm not telling you to do anything, but Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate anything, have a great break. Just have fun. Just have fun, guys. Do it. That's the only thing I ask of you. This is Ethan Butler. And I'm out.